Hello and welcome to the A&P. I am Alex Johansson and my co-host Patrick McCallum. Patrick,
Hello, everyone. How are you getting on?
we're having logical discussions about the state of the world. Let's get into it, brother. Hey, Patrick.
How are you getting on, buddy? What have you for me today?
We have Ethan from the Habitual Line Crosser. We've seen some of his funny videos with planes and boats and West Taiwan and Russia, Ukraine, and let's see, we got little European Texas as Poland. A lot of really funny videos with Buff the Plane and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Pretty cogent discussions about how countries deal with each other and stuff like that. But today he is talking about Iran and how it is we got to where we are. With the Israel-Iran conflict and how the United States plays into it and other European countries. Looks like he did a pretty good job, so let Ethan cook.
Now, anyone who has any experience with the history of that part of the world may say that it is shrouded in nuance. I, on the other hand, tend to believe that it is just covered in fucking bullshit. There's no way we're going to be able to solve that shit in my lifetime, or yours, or anybody else's. It's just, we should just mulligan all of it and start over. Moving on.
Go ahead.
He's right. He is bang on the money there.
Well, I think people don't recognize
ancient history.
Right. People don't recognize the history involved in how we got to the place we are. We're just like, run in circles, scream and shout, as opposed to saying, well, these are the things that led to the situation that we're in. We just say, oh, it's too complicated. It's too nuanced. No,
it's not.
It's not.
I think what happens with an awful lot of people, and goes for a lot of news agencies especially, is they don't look deeper into the history of a region before they start talking about it. You can actually see it in a lot of news reports.
Well, you have the same issues with Ireland and North Ireland and the UK and Britain and other interactions. There's a lot that goes into that.
A lot of ancient history there. We know from our own experience, a lot of ancient history.
Yeah, this 500, 600, 700 years. It's not just what happened last Thursday. It's what happened in the late 1800s, 1640, 1840, the potato famine. All these things contribute to these interactions in the future.
Exactly.
Yeah, one action by one Tanisha, or one action by,
by another
king.
Leader,
some liege who does a thing. Yeah. So, no, I see what he's saying there.
About Iran themselves. Iran is actually one of the oldest continuously populated large areas in
basically the New Jersey of the Middle East. Well done.
Yes.
HLC, well done.
The world, dating back to 4000 BC. So,
So, history buff, my friend, Patrick McCallum. In the inception of Iran, I believe it was the Persian Empire about 4,000 years ago, correct?
The Persian Empire was right up to the 6th century, roughly, when it started. It started declining really around the 4th, and then the decade was around the 5th and 6th century. It started just completely collapsing into its own smaller regions and so on.
Right, but
the rise of Islam at the time.
Right. Okay. Well, that makes sense. But I mean, there was peoples there, and those people are still the native people of that land, right?
Well, no, there was multiple. It wasn't just one people. The Persian Empire was made up of hundreds of different tribes with all different beliefs and so on. I think when people think about empire, they think it's one people and one fate.
Well,
a lot of ancient empires,
Rome wasn't like that at all, and it's. Currently, based on its size, it's the heart of what it used to be, which was functioning from where Israel is now to India, right? That was the breadth.
Yeah, extended out there, and then think of most of under the Turkish Empire. Well, most of the Persian Empire all along its coastline was taken by the Romans. So eventually, the death knell then was declining as the Roman Empire pushed in as well. So there was a lot of then it broke up, it shattered into multiple smaller nations,
right?
That eventually kind of banded together because they didn't like the Byzantines at the time.
Just a basic conversation about this brings in, well, these people, those people, these tribes.
Yes.
Because the eastern side and the western side of the empire were wildly different people. Just like those who are currently in Morocco versus those who are in the Aegean Sea are very different people, but they were all under the Roman crest at one point.
Well, the Roman Empire split over between both emperors at the time, split into two. Right. And that was a kind of a way of them hopefully, eventually killed them, but they were trying to stop the constant civil wars that were happening.
Right.
Because the Roman Empire was also being pushed in from external threats as well.
And the Gauls and all those, and then those in North Britain. And
those tribes.
Right.
Yeah.
But all this to say that it is complicated, and he's right. It's going to take quite a Gordian knot to undo, right?
I would say it would take at least another 500-600 years easily.
Ooh, that's long range planning, bud. Long range planning.
Yeah, I'm just saying that's the way history works. It's not a switch overnight.
What's not happening next Tuesday, huh? That's not the deal.
Pretty much, yeah. Everything takes time in history.
Take your time, right? Bend your knees, take a deep breath, stretch. Yeah, you got to stretch. All right, here we go.
Yeah.
I'm going to focus mainly on like the U.S. and Israel and how we really started becoming a piece of this. So I skipped over a lot of their history, which I may do in another video. I'm not really sure. But one thing of note that I did want to bring up is that in the 1200s,
we should probably do something on that. We should probably do some history lessons
on the Great Khan and his empire and the whole lot.
Right, and the Persian Empire as well. We should probably go ahead and figure out something like that.
Yeah.
I think people would want to know.
Yeah, see the way he's pushing in here now. This is a great map, actually.
Around the time of the Mongolian Empire.
Yeah.
Okay, so
so you can see the Khanate of the Golden Horde there, in the Great Khan.
Right, and it pushes into Persia, like all of Persia.
Oh yeah, you can see it. You can see there where it was pushing straight.
It doesn't quite get to the Mediterranean where Israel and Jordan are currently located, or even the Ottoman Empire.
Do you see where all that is cut off there? That was think of it as the Byzantine Empire around this time period now.
Okay, and that would be the Eastern Roman Empire, the Byzantines.
Yeah.
Okay.
As the Western and the Eastern, yeah, this is the Eastern side. So they became the Byzantine Empire afterwards.
Right.
Well, you can see here, you can see Arabia now.
Yep.
That all different tribes down there. What's left of, see the Persia there? That was left to them at the time.
Right.
They lost a lot of their power, yeah. And you can see how much space. You have to remember, at the height of the Great Khan and Khanate of their empire at the time, they were about twice, if not 3 times, roughly. The people disagree, but around twice, if not 3 times, the size of the combined Roman Empire at its height.
Well, yeah, just look at that. If we were to look at the picture of Europe,
China. Yeah, that's all of China. On Russia, that's all you could see.
Right. And I'm guessing up toward even the Arctic Circle, they owned it, but like there wasn't anybody there, so maybe the physical space was actually even
where the line is. Yeah, they owned it, but they didn't really care.
Yeah. There's not enough population or people there for it to matter, and it's too cold to live there. All right, here we go.
Genghis Khan had sent 2 diplomatic missions into what is now currently Iran and said, hey, I want to talk about things with you. And they were both slaughtered. So
yes,
Genghis Khan promptly invaded.
Come on. Yes.
You see, he sent the conversation soldiers. How many did he send? Do you know, roughly?
All told, history is roughly saying about 300,000.
300,000 to have a discussion with the Shah or whoever was in charge of Persia at the time?
Yes. All right. King of Persia at the time. Yeah. He sent down the conversation.
Let's burn this motherfucker down!
Whoa!
Slaughtered entire civilizations, razed entire cities. I mean, everybody, everywhere was wiped out. So let's just go ahead and say that Iran does have a bit of a history of picking fights that they themselves cannot fucking win. Now, in between...
Does that sound like a fact to you?
That's a kind of...
Well, was it hubris?
Yes, that region the Persian Empire had, yes, they cover Iran and Iraq. What you know as Pakistan now,
right?
Half of that, and a bit of India. So yes.
So it's hubris.
What he's saying is right.
We're big and we're bad, and you ain't nothing you could do to us. Like we're the biggest kid in the schoolyard. That kind of thing.
I think the Persian Empire at the time was, even though they had lost a lot, they're still very arrogant,
very viable.
And they saw these ruffians coming in on horseback. Well, when we say horses, think small little ponies.
Okay, Mongolian they saw the little pony armies and they were like, "We got this," and then they didn't have that.
We got this. Yes.
Ah,
unfortunately, yeah. Do you know the old saying? Don't judge a book by its cover.
You mean shooting bows off horseback is effective as hell, huh? Wow.
Well, 300,000 of them is, well, there's history books kind of disagree, but around 300,000 conversation soldiers. Well,
on little ponies with bows. Okay.
Yes.
There and more modern Iran, it has been conquered and reconquered, very similar to the video that I did about Israel and Hamas, for quite a long time. But I think most of our issues that we have nowadays stem from right around World War II. So in World War II, Iran was officially neutral. However, there was Germans in Iran that were operating out of that country. The Allies, including the Soviets at that point in time, said, you need to get the Germans out. And Iran's like, no, we're neutral. So then the Allies invaded the United Kingdom and Russia and a couple other small countries. Believe it or not, the U.S. was not involved in this. And their thought process behind it is, we need to secure those oil refineries for the Allies and not the Axis. So that way cutting off German access to oil, which is incredibly important. But you know what's crazy in that entire thing? Americans that were not part of that, in 1943, had Iran sign the Tehran Declaration, which basically said that when the war ends...
We're going to have to put a link to the Tehran Declaration so that everybody can get a look at that. Because that's FDR, Churchill, and Joseph Stalin in that picture.
Yeah. But I think by the way, he's going to do a fantastic job going over it.
Well, I would hope.
It's a very short-lived agreement.
All the allies are going to leave. This is the land that you're promised. This belongs to the nation of Iran. Here are your borders, and you will be given independence. The United States did that for Iran. Just throwing this back here, right? The United States did that when the United States wasn't even the ones involved in invading Iran at that point in time. Well, spoiler alert, our old friends, the Russians, just like fucking since forever, did not abide by that treaty. The United Kingdom left exactly when they were supposed to do. The Russians, on the other hand, controlled parts of northern Iran for about a year until Iran was like, look, we'll give you some oil if you guys just leave. And they're like, we will leave. We will take the oil and we will leave. And they left. And then Iran very quickly overthrew all the loyalists and said, fuck you, you're not getting your oil, which is a boss move for Iran. I got to be totally real with you.
Yeah, that's baller.
Right, that's when the Russians are going to screw themselves. Yeah, pretty much.
There. Quick disclaimer, as I go through this video, I'm going to be explaining, I'm going to use a term and then I'm going to explain what it is. I hope I got all the terms in here. So when I use the term Shah, that's pretty much a king. It's S-H-A-H. More or less, it's a king. It's an autocracy. They do have a prime minister, kind of similar to the United Kingdom, how they do today. So fast forward to 1953, the U.S. aided in a coup that put Zahedi as the new prime minister. It was under the same Shah, but ultimately the prime minister was the one who really had all the power at that point in time. Now, they eventually signed what is known as the Baghdad Pact, and is formally known as CENTO, or the Central Treaty Organization, which is... The entire purpose of CENTO is very similar to NATO, which was to stop Russian expansion and to protect individual countries. A lot of the documentation in CENTO draw very, similar parallels to NATO in the fact that, an attack on one is an attack on all. However, individual countries...
NATO and this particular pact were kind of drawn up by the same group of guys, so... He's right.
So very NATO, CENTO, and Warsaw Pact at the time, right?
Yeah. It's very, very simple. A lot of these agreements roughly have the same number.
Are not guaranteed backup from their allies if they choose to go into war themselves. Things like that. Well, pretty quickly, Iraq left that, and then it started to just kind of fall apart when Pakistan wanted to attack India. And the U.S. was like, well, we're not going to help you out because it's not in the documentation. They didn't start the shit. However, also during this time, from the 1950s till the Islamic Revolution in 1979, Iran was experiencing something that they called the White Revolution. Now, in this White Revolution, they became...
I remember, funny enough, I was actually reading a history book on how Iran became Iran. Mm-hmm. And he's right. They were starting to more modernize, become more Western.
Right.
Young people wanted to be free and open and
until about 1979-ish, maybe.
It started brewing a good couple of years before that, when the main he probably will go into where the main ruling class at times are losing their grips and power.
Right.
As young people just wanted to be free and express themselves. It's the roaring 60s, by the way, just saying.
Right.
But
you never really consider Iranian hippies. You know what I'm saying?
A lot of the Middle Eastern countries are going through their same, very similar revolutions of free expression that were similar to the United States at the time. Mm-hmm. Where people wanted to be free, they wanted to practice free love, and just be free of the oppression that they were under.
Just young people being young. Just that.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Became incredibly westernized. They were very chummy with the United States. This is also during the time when they got their F4s and they got their F5s and they got their F14s and so on and so forth. But in this time, a string of new policies made a lot of the Muslims feel alienated in Iran. And I was like, well, I really want to know what these policies are and why they felt so alienated, because I try and get both sides. So I looked into some of the policies. It allowed non-Muslims to run for office. Okay. Gave women the right to vote. All right. Allowed men and women to have conversations together in public, which is outlawed under certain sects of Islam. It authorized Western clothing. Some articles saying that it mandated it, others saying it authorized it. So I kind of went with the latter on that one. And then it gave power to the government and took it away from the Shia clergy, which I...
In 1979, when the regime came into power, there were actually women in their parliament, like female types. They just took them out the back and said, get the hell out of the building. Like, you don't represent anybody. You're done. Like,
yeah, well, a lot of them were, there were a lot of them weren't just, a lot of the administrators at the time weren't just taken out and kindly sent home. A lot of them were absolutely imprisoned, murdered, and tortured.
Oh, yeah, a lot. Yeah. I was trying to be pleasant about it, but they did bad things to those women who maintained any kind of power in the structure. They were like, absolutely not.
I could totally understand you being upset about that. I mean, religion loves to be in control of things. It does.
What? Religion likes to be in control of things. Have you heard of this before, Patrick?
I live in Ireland. Trust me, we have had a very long history over here of that.
Got it.
Very long history.
some Christian sect, I believe it might have been. Something.
Yeah, we've had a long history of this. Yes.
Doesn't matter which religion it is, they just love control. The man who would later become Ayatollah Khomeini, which is not the current one they have Khomeini now. Khomeini was from 1979 to 1989 when he passed away, and Khomeini is from 1989 until current. He emerged as a prominent critic of the white revolution, saying that its policies were abhorrent.
That's only 46 years, by the way. That dude's been in control for a hot minute.
Abhorrent and un-Islamic. His exact words. That's a direct quote there. And after the Islamic Revolution, which we'll get to here shortly, Khomeini became the ruling Islamic jurist, which I actually had to look up what that meant. And it's basically, again, a king with extra steps because he is the sole authority for political and religious power. So, like, he is the end-all be-all of everything that has to do with anything.
Theocratic autocracy.
Yeah.
In that
and
country.
Those type of governments, by the way, never, ever last too long.
79, 46 years, right? 10 years for one guy, 36 for the other. That's a long time.
History goes over the course of hundreds of years. So, but most of these, I can see it fall in our lifetime. Would it be a pleasant fall? What happens in Iran?
Oh, I can't anticipate it's going to be
peaceful.
No, it won't be
peaceful. It'll be very bloody, very messy.
Lots of suffering, and
they will not give up power easily. Nope. It will eventually happen. Eventually. It goes around
religion or policy and politics. He is the one. But what I noticed, I wanted to kind of do a stark contrast, and to kind of put it in perspective, Iran shot themselves in the foot because their religious leader was an idiot who wanted power over a failing nation rather than to live in a successful one.
Some of you may die, but it's a sacrifice I am willing to make.
Here's how the comparison is going to break down. Towards the end of the White Revolution, before the Islamic Revolution, Iran's economy was growing at over 10% every year consistently. It varied over that 10%, but like a minimum of 10% every year.
10% is an absolutely amazing jump in
GDP. They really took off after World War II. People don't understand it.
They did amazing. It was,
they were exporting oil to everyone across the world. Billions were flown into them.
From Karg Island. Karg Island was shipping hundreds of millions of barrels all around the entire world until 79. Yeah.
But there were billions were flown in. Like if they had kept their government, they'd be now richer than Saudi Arabia.
Oh, for sure.
Easily.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Better reserves, better internal infrastructure for the movement of oil out to Karg Island, and then also north and east as well. Absolutely incredible. The pipelines that were created after World War II to get that oil pumped up into Europe and to Eastern Europe as well. Oh, yeah. They would have been one of the most mighty forces on the planet economically, right?
Economically, yes.
And they gave it up. They gave it up. They're like, we don't want any of that. I was like, okay. I was a young kid and my parents were talking about it.
You'll see the short-sightedness now in a minute.
Here. And this is a crazy thing to a lot of Americans. All of their debt was paid off by the mid-1970s. They became a creditor nation instead of a debted nation. They were able to credit to other nations and other things. They were doing incredibly well. So in the 40 years since the Islamic Revolution, they've grown it marginally around or less than 0.5% every single year. Some argued that Zahedi was a puppet for the West and we just got everything we wanted for him, but he was incredibly critical of the West and he was very nationalistic. And at one point in time, the Carter administration actually wanted to remove him from power because he wasn't willing to work with the West. So that entire idea just falls on itself. All right, so first we're going to move into the hostage crisis, which is a lot worse and more layers than I ever thought possible. I thought it was just a quick, like, this is why they did it and this is how it's solved. I was way wrong on that. So when the Islamists seized power, the former Shah of Iran, he was granted asylum in the United States, but he was also there to undergo cancer.
Carter letting the Shah get treatment in the U.S. is why the hostages of the second crisis were given to Ronald Reagan, day one of his administration in 1981. Iran wanted to do everything they could to shit on Carter for helping the Shah. So they had a problem with Carter.
Yeah.
So that's why.
They had a problem with the United States at the time, no matter who the president was. The person they wanted was over there, pretty much.
Right. Well, but that was a combination of the CIA and USAID. Right. The CIA had to get presidential authority to perform tasks, but the United States Agency for International Development didn't have to do that. They back-channeled and did whatever the hell they want based on.
No, but by the way, a lot of world leaders go to the United States for cancer treatment, all across the world.
Mm-hmm, for sure.
Like, Gaddafi, all the rest of them went over there. So
for treatment. He ended up
as long as there was money there.
Dying a year later, even before the hostages were released. So that entire idea is really stupid. That is when the Ayatollah Khomeini started referring to the U.S. as the Great Satan. At least the fuckers know we're great. Anyways, so the hostage crisis actually is a bit of a drawn-out thing, and there were several steps. So there was actually 2 embassy assaults. The first one, they took a Marine hostage, they tortured him. He was actually set to be executed for murder, but President Carter actually secured his release. That was in February of 1979. The next siege was planned for actually September. They had watched the Marines, the guards, they had mapped their schedules, and they actually didn't even inform the Ayatollah Khomeini that they were going to do this because they thought that he would try and stop them, and they wanted to show him that if they were there and they were spouting in support of him, he would have no choice but to support their cause, which actually turned out to be true, and we'll get into that when they actually siege it. But they decided to wait in September. Come November, they originally had staged a peaceful protest, but when they got a little bit close to the guards brandished firearms, and they retreated saying that we are peaceful, we are peaceful. Once they learned that the guards weren't going to use lethal force, busloads of people started showing up around the time that the protesters had broken through the gate. Once they had seized the area, anyone who wasn't there at that point in time, they rounded them up and then brought them back there and maintained them as hostages as well, with the exception of 6 people who were actually taken refuge by Canadian diplomats. So fucking shout out to Canada for not backing up terrorism. Their whole idea behind it is they wanted the Shah to come back and face trial and then be executed. Well, fucking joke's on them. They were there for 444 days, and during that time, he had actually died in Egypt of cancer. This whole hostage situation forced the U.S. to cut diplomatic ties with Iran, and they ended up backing the Iraqi invasion of Iran to push back Ayatollah Khomeini's kind of ideology that was bleeding into Saddam's country. And wouldn't you know it, Saddam actually used chemical weapons on the Iranians.
So part of our charter and our willingness as the United States to interact with other countries in warfare is that they do not exploit that specific thing. Chemical warfare. It is.
Oh, you mean the chemical warfare?
The chemical warfare,
weapons.
Right.
A lot of these chemical weapons were supplied from outside forces.
Right.
To Iraq at the time.
I have some training in that. They would use blister agents and nerve agents and all other kinds of things like Lewiston and just disgusting things. It is a horrific way to die, and it is absolutely inhumane. Not that shooting someone is humane. I'm not saying that is the most humane thing you could do, but killing people that way is disgusting.
And
right?
it was used on quite a regular basis at the time by the Iraqi regime. By the way, not just on their war here, but on certain parts of the population as well.
Yes, internally. Just gross.
So about those WMDs. Look, I'm going to just go off on a tangent here. Anyone who's like, there was no WMDs in Iraq. Look, if your definition of WMD is nuclear weapon, we knew that those were not there. We knew that for a fucking fact. But my definition is any weapon that...
For context, after the 91 invasion of Iraq, also known as Desert Storm, the UN requested that Iraq undergo weapons inventory inspections for WMDs. In 2003, they refused, causing the Second Gulf War, or Operation Iraqi Freedom.
Can create mass destruction, chemical, biological, radiological, or nuclear. There were Marines in Fallujah that were treated.
He specifically did that, and so HLC is a U.S. Army guy, and he put that in order CBRN, chemical, biological, right? Because that's the military job. It's CBRN, chemical, biological, nuclear, like explosive. It's pretty interesting that he would do that in that order, in that way, right?
Yeah.
So, but there's jobs in the military. They're called the Dragon Warriors because it was the napalm crew from the World War II set that became chemical warfare experts in the United States. Like at this point, it's not offense chemical, it's defense, right? We set up perimeters to ensure that there isn't gas or other kinds of negative biological.
Because people forget that chemical weapons can be put together very easily by most states on the planet.
Yes, for sure. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
there's huge stockpiles that were supposed to have been destroyed, but the problem is it's very difficult to destroy that stuff once you've put it together, right? It's not an easy process. So, all right, let's let old boy cook.
For exposure to mustard gas in the 2003 invasion, which kind of makes the whole like no WMDs falls flat on its face. Anyways, we're going to continue on. So the Beirut bombing. This is the next big step in the relations between the United States and Iran. Now you're like, Beirut is Lebanon. Don't worry. We will get there. So in 1983, the Beirut bombing, a couple of suicide bombers with 12,000 pounds of homemade explosive killed 241 U.S. service members and 58 French military at a barracks. Now, why were they there? They were a peacekeeping force. Israel had moved into Lebanon to try and keep Syria from pushing through Lebanon and attacking Israel, and they were trying to establish a 40-kilometer keep-out zone. Around the time of the Beirut bombing, Israel had been like, hey, Syria, are you good with us just like parting ways and you stay on your side, I'll stay on my side? And Syria naturally said no, and Israel was like, cool, we're leaving anyways. And as Israel started to back off, attacks on U.S. and peacekeeping personnel started to increase, which eventually led to the 1983 Beirut bombing. Now, you know what's crazy? I found out that no one has ever been charged with any kind of crime in correlation with the Beirut bombing. No charges have ever been filed. The people who took responsibility called themselves Islamist Jihad. This was 1983. It's important to note that Hezbollah didn't exist until 1985. Many people believe that this was like pre-Hezbollah, but it was Hezbollah. They just kind of used a fake name to keep themselves from being discovered. I don't know. Terrorists are weird. Now you're like, HLC, how does this tie back to Iran? We're getting to it. So in 2004, we're fast forward a little bit. 2004, the Ayatollah had backed these individuals called the Iranian Suicide Brigades, and there was a specific brigade that ended up building a monument to the suicide bombers of the Beirut bombing. I'm sorry, but we don't build monuments to shit that we didn't have a part in, but neither here nor there. It's also important to note, because I'm trying to tie all this together because there's so much going on over there in the Middle East, that specific unit of the Iranian suicide brigades is named after Yahya Ayash, which is a Hamas bomb maker, who is also known as the engineer.
I'm an engineer. That means I solve problems.
So, Hezbollah, Iran, Hamas, we already got those ties there. Let's see how many more we can tie in. I will say the U.S. did have an oopsie. In 1988, we had a naval...
Well, there's a lot of other oopsies in there as well. And one of those oopsies is, the CIA, like I said before, requires executive approval for stuff, but USAID does not, right? And at that point, without computers and CCTVs and a lot of other monitoring, there's a lot of clandestine stuff that went down. And I'm pretty sure Iran was not real happy with USAID and what they were fomenting in the space, right? So there's a lot of other sidebar stuff that's going on here.
Can they act on their own without executive overreach, as you said?
Not
They
anymore.
can just go after. They can go off and do their own thing.
They don't require executive approval.
Yeah. Wow.
So it means they got appropriated a lot of money that went to NGOs to perform these tasks. And
so you're saying that they were acting like an intelligence service, so.
USAID was acting like an intelligence service attempting to, when you were saying how they tried to put democracy into a bunch of countries that didn't need it, wanted, or desire
the CIA did, yeah.
Right. So what they would do is they would destabilize the local government, and then they would cause riots and all kinds of other crazy stuff. And it's well documented. It's like, this is not wild. I'm not saying wild things.
I read a couple of books about the different CIA operations over the years.
Right. But again, the CIA requires the executive approval, but
I know,
USAID did not.
Yeah, but CIA were quite proud of the fact they were very proud that they were doing it.
Right. So,
and then you have to remember the presidents at the time were happy they were doing it as well. So,
yeah. But there's a lot of other things that are going on in this, and as well as the links between Mossad and USAID and CIA and Mossad and all that kind of stuff. Like there's just a lot going on, right?
Yeah.
Ship accidentally shoot down an Iranian civilian airliner. Now, the U.S. never formally apologized, but they paid them like $61 million. Which, do you have any idea what $61 million will do for you in Iran? Around the same time, Operation Praying Mantis happened, where Iran learned how U.S. diplomacy works. Fool me once, we're going to be polite to you and tell you not to do it again. Fool me twice, we're going to sink half of your Navy in 8 hours. Please go ahead and check out my buddy Nick, the Fat Electrician, his video on Operation Praying Mantis. It's beautiful. That's why I don't want to get too far into that here. But Praying Mantis is an important part of this story because it is a turning point for Iran. I think that Praying Mantis was the point that Iran realized you cannot go toe-to-toe with the U.S. and their allies. You need to pump money into terror organizations who don't believe in borders, who can move wherever they need to move, and can hide amongst the population. And, tribute to them, it's really fucking effective. So basically, Iran has been pumping money, weapons, travel documents, other logistical support into terror groups in Gaza, Lebanon, Syria, Afghanistan, Iraq, Yemen. Pick a country in the Middle East that has a terror group. Iran probably gives them something. They even have a Unit 190, and the Unit 190 is specifically designed to transport. They're a logistics unit that transports weapons and equipment to terror groups in the Middle East.
They also have a bounty for people and their families for those who kill Jews. There's a huge fund in Iran where if you kill a Jew and you live, you get paid money. If you kill Jews and you die, your family gets paid, right? That's unsavory to say the least, right?
Yes.
So the Quds forces, and the Quds forces are Iran's version of like a CIA and special operations put together. They specialize in unconventional warfare. The only one they're kind of on rocky terms with is Al-Qaeda. Now, Al-Qaeda has gotten help from Iran. They've been able to transition through Iran without any issues. They've also gotten travel documents from Iran. But Iran's not really, cool with Al-Qaeda. They have a bit of a rocky past. So that's the only one that's and that's probably why Al-Qaeda is fizzling out rather quickly because they have no friends left.
I have literally nothing going on. I have no friends. Does anybody want to hang out?
But it's also important to note that during the war in Iraq, Al-Qaeda...
Well, let's be absolutely clear. If there was not a Western enemy, then internally, those who practice different sects of Islam would be attacking one another.
Oh yeah, they would tear each other to pieces.
Right, the Shiite and the Sunni. And that's where a lot of these problems come in. That's where the Al-Qaeda issue and the Iran issue come into play because one is Shiite and one is Sunni, right?
Yes.
And that has to deal with how they deal with the Hadith versus the Quran.
One empire takes it all over and holds together with an iron fist.
Right. So if they can create
get on the path.
Right, if they can create the caliphate, but the problem is they have set the terms for the setting of the caliphate to the minute of the destruction of the Jewish state. Yeah. Right. Once the Jews are destroyed, but I don't even know. Some of them say it's when Israel dies, and some of them say it's when every Jew on the planet dies.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So
they change the goalposts all the time.
Right. So, but if there is a caliphate, and that caliphate then represents all of the Muslim countries in the world, and that Cento Pact becomes not the Cento Pact, but a caliphate, which is a theocratic autocracy, then they could be dealt with as a whole. But until then, all these pieces and parts and all these things, and they're not going to want Israel in that space at all. That space will not be allowed to be.
Well, they tried that back in between the 6th and 12th century. It worked for a while, but once other nations start banding together, which happened to them, and start pushing back,
like the Crusades.
You can't. Well, this is long before the Crusades. The precursor, you could say, to the Crusades, when they came up through what we know as Morocco, through Spain, they were going into France, into the middle of France.
Right. For sure. Andalusia
we
and all those
covered it
places
before
in Spain.
in a previous episode. So they've tried this. What happened eventually is, like as he said, they just split into multiple factions and into multiple smaller nations as we know them now, and they were eventually just picked apart, which happens. Everyone comes together and peters out after a while.
The other thing with that is because the ICC recognizes certain borders, right? So if you take the Donbass and Crimea in the Ukraine, it is occupied by Russia because the UN says that is Ukrainian space, right? Yeah,
that's Ukrainian land,
Right. And then when they say things like Israel is occupying certain spaces, they're not occupying certain space based on how the lines were drawn by the ICC and what the UN recognizes as Israel's land. They're not occupying any space that isn't their land already. So they're not occupying Gaza. And Natasha Hausdorff went over that too, about how international law works on this. It's the same reason there isn't genocide, because genocide has a very specific legal meaning, right? Which the IDF is not doing the thing that is genocide.
Well, but I've always pointed out that in war, it's a very messy business. That there is no, when you shoot a bullet or shoot a bomb, sometimes you're going to hit your target, but you're also going to cause collateral damage. These things are going to happen at war. That's always going to be without a shadow of all through history. If you're firing muskets or a missile, always going to happen. There's always going to be civilian casualties.
Absolutely, especially with muskets, no barreling.
IDF forces would regularly go to Iran, and they would recruit, they would train, they would build, and then they would come back and attack American forces, just like the Taliban did in Pakistan. All the dumb ones got killed real quickly. It was all the smart ones that ran away to another country because the U.S. has to follow borders. They don't. I know, it's a shitty policy. I don't like it any more than you do, but it's also important to note that this, ladies and gentlemen, is why Hamas is pushing the genocide narrative. Don't get me wrong. Israel is not without their faults. They have done a lot of shit.
Here you go, Mr. President.
God bless Israel.
In Gaza, right? I'm not going to denounce that, just breeze right over that. They've done a lot of shit. But Hamas right now is in a very interesting position, which is why I'm paying attention to it. Every other terror organization that has ever existed in the Middle East had another country to run to that the US or our allies couldn't chase them into. Hamas doesn't. Hamas is cornered. Egypt is literally letting 0 people in. You can't get through Israel because they got a blockade, and the ocean is covered by the United States, which is why you're starting to see such an uptick in the propaganda about genocide. If you look at some of the
If you'd like to learn more about the Israel-Gaza conflict, check out HLC's video on the matter. We also went over this a lot with Natasha Hausdorff and Secker Dottie addressing the Oxford Union. That is not what is happening, but they have to ramp it up like they're doing a bad thing, right?
He's right. Eventually, Hamas is going to lose this war. They know they're losing. You know what I mean? And as he said, they're cornered as well.
Egypt's not going to take them. So
Egypt is very. By the way, when people criticize Egypt for closing their borders, yes, Egypt is taking their approach of, we don't want to be getting in the middle of this, but we're not going to. Yeah, Egypt is in a very tough position internationally as well.
Right, but Israel has been functionally in charge of that space since 1967. From 1948 to 1967, Egypt owned and controlled the Gaza Strip.
Yes.
And they could have said, here you go, you guys can have your land. In 1967, Israel takes over, and they're there until 2005, when they literally say, okay, all right, here's lots and lots of industry and power and things. We're going to take out all the Jews and even all the dead Jews. Like, there is zero, like, it is, what is the term? It was an ethnic cleansing of the area. All the Jews are out, right? Yeah. And then from 2005 to 2006, they have a rocky time. In 2006, Hamas takes over. Right?
Yes.
So they've been in power since 2006. So for 21 years, they're doing wild stuff, right? Yeah. And then on October 7th, they foment a war by attacking. And then,
by the way, he will go over that, I presume. Hamas was encouraged to do that attack by Iran and other allies. in the region.
And they actually did it a year later than their initial planning.
Yeah, where are their allies now?
Well, their allies should be backing them. If they feel it's a righteous thing to do, then they should be fully backing them and telling the rest of the world to get bent because we're right. That's what they should do if they have the courage of their fucking convictions.
The unfortunate thing with them is they don't have the ability to fight back. Iran has a big speech every now and again. The last, say, 2 weeks especially have proven that Iran doesn't have any power. They don't have the military power to back up their words.
Yeah, they have no teeth. They just have mouth.
No.
So
it's same thing happened to Russia and Ukraine. They marched in, and everyone in the world thought Ukraine would be taken in less than 2 weeks. Didn't work out well. It's 3 years later, and they've taken what? Less than 10% of the country.
Yeah, it's not going well. General? Well, but the thing is Crimea and the Donbass going to go back to Ukraine? I don't think so. Russia will get very nuclear if that happens. They'll be like, we're not giving that up. And that was from 2014.
I think eventually there will come a time where Russia will have to sit down, because you can't afford to keep losing them in there losing and keep the popular support that Putin is trying to keep as well.
Well,
at the same time, every dictator has to come to a point where will they be allowed to keep the Crimea?
I think
yes. I think yes or no. Will they be able to keep the rest? No way. The Ukrainians will not allow that. Not a hope in the world.
Right, but then the the ICC and the UN will have to then redraw the borders and say Crimea and the Donbass is now part of Russia. And that's going to be the thing that they demand. So they're no longer considered an occupying force in those areas.
Yeah, they'll eventually have to be phased out of that area, and it will eventually go back to the Ukrainians. They have no choice.
I think eventually. The same argument is the same thing like with Northern Ireland, right? Northern Ireland should probably be part of the Republic of Ireland, except you guys can't handle their debt and their bullshit. Because the UK is not going to pay for that debt.
But you have to remember, the Ukrainians are not going to bow down to the Russians. Not a hope in the world. And they shouldn't. They were invaded by a foreign power. They shouldn't have back down in any shape, form, or fashion.
Right, but the Crimea and Donbass was 2014. And
unfortunately, they were allowed to roll in there and keep it. They shouldn't have been allowed to keep that. That emboldened Putin to do what he's doing now.
But the UN didn't denounce the action or behavior.
It is. Yes, it is.
Nobody did a damn thing about it. They wrote a strongly worded letter.
No, you're right. All they did was write a strongly worded letter. And the President of the United States and others came along, because the Ukrainians were going, wait a minute, he's after taking our land. Can we do something about it? And everyone said, well, if you do, we won't let you join the big boys club. And the Ukrainians are kind of going, everyone in Ukraine knew this would come back and bite them in the ass, because once you give small bits to somebody like Putin.
Oh, the Dane Geld. Once you give the Danish the gold, you better keep giving them the gold.
Yes, they knew it. Everyone knew it, and it was kind of the weakness of the international community at the time to allow Putin to get away with it. But it was the weakness of the international community over the last 20+ years to let Putin get away with lots of stuff he was doing at the time.
Right.
Unfortunately.
All right, let's get back to Ethan.
Doctrine correlated with the Gaza Ministry of Health, which is Hamas controlled, by the way. They will never count fighters as actual KIA. They will always count them as civilians.
Right, and Natasha Hausdorff talked about that, as well as Secker Dottie, and the other two gentlemen. We'll link those videos that we did for the Oxford Union, because it's actually super relevant here. Go ahead and take a note on that there, Patrick, so we make sure we get the people what they got coming.
It was actually put out by them. And in the United States, if you can create some kind of sadness or outrage amongst the public, politicians respond because they care about getting elected. So they figured out the cheat code. All you have to do is make people feel bad about what is happening to you, whether or not you fucking deserve it. And America is going to respond in kind, because our politicians want to get elected. It's fucking messy, isn't it? Oh God, it still gets worse. It's important to note that in our various sanctions and unsanctions that we've had with Iran since our history of dealing with them, President Obama signed a nuclear deal with Iran in 2008, limiting the amount of enriched uranium that they could possibly have. Now, President Trump in 2018 left that deal, which circumstantially had it dissolve, and Iran can make as much as they want to. I wanted to know why. So I was like, okay, I went in, and according to the Trump administration, what they're saying is that the deal itself did not limit Iran enough that they could not still create a nuclear weapon. Also, it didn't.
Right. So the uranium needs to be enriched to 90% to have it be weapons grade. And part of the issue currently is that they were at 60% and spinning it up even more. Right. And they do have ballistic missiles, which means that in a short period of time, they would have been able to create a nuclear weapon with the weapons grade uranium at 90%.
Yes, in theory.
Yeah, in theory, that is the belief. That is the general belief. I'm not saying this as rote as this is, you know, God's own truth, but it's it is a general consensus that within a short period of time, they would have had the capacity with the 3,800, 4,000 ballistic missiles they have, put nuclear warheads on them and attempt to do an airburst over Israel.
Yes.
And then if that airburst works, then the Iron Dome goes down and then they can literally wipe them off the map. So that is the thought process there, from what I understand and what I have been able to scour.
Do you think it was wrong to enter that agreement back in 2016?
Obama went into it. Trump came out of it because it didn't address the actual production of enriched uranium. Right? They could make pretty much however much they wanted as long as they didn't do something more with it. Right? So for it to function for a nuclear power plant, up to about 60% is all you really need when you enrich the uranium. But getting it from 60 to 90, they would have had pretty much whatever capacity they wanted to have of it, right? They were just told they couldn't enrich it any further, but they could create all they wanted to ensure that they had the appropriate energy infrastructure.
Yeah, the nuclear energy and so on. Yes.
Yeah, but that isn't what that deal looked like. It was really not good. It was not great.
You think Trump in 2016 should have probably rewritten the agreement and have stricter controls on it?
I don't think the House or the Senate, which was controlled by the Democrats at the time, would have allowed that to happen. All he could do was pull out and hope that foreign affairs, international affairs could deal with that. And it just it didn't come to fruition. It just didn't go as smoothly as he wanted it to.
He had 4 years to do
right,
something.
Except that, but he trusted a lot of people in that time frame that he shouldn't have, that were really not working toward the agenda that he was elected to get done.
Yeah.
Limit the amount of ballistic weapons and then weapons they were able to transfer to their terror allies that are in the region. So he thought the deal, or the administration in general, thought the deal wasn't good enough, so they backed out of it, and now they're trying to negotiate a new one. Jury's still out on how that's going to work out. And that more or less, I mean, there's a whole bunch of other whataboutisms. Look, if you want to play whatabout with somebody in the Middle East, there is always something else that happened that you can do a whataboutism. I'm just trying to give you guys a low down dirty about what the hell is going on, okay? That leads us to today. So, before I get into what has been destroyed, why? And why now? Because why would Israel start attacking Iran just out of the blue like this? Well, so here's the thing. Iran has figured out the cheat code. They pumped a ton of money into Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis. Those are the three primary ones that they'd like to back in the area. Hezbollah is licking their wounds because Syria has fallen, and Hezbollah was out of Lebanon, and normally when you're getting your shit rocked in Lebanon, you would run to Syria. And Syria is starting to side a little bit more with the United States since the fall of the previous regime that was there. Hamas is completely fucking cornered. They're licking their wounds. They have almost nowhere to hide. They are absolutely cornered and fucking terrified by Israel. And then you come to the Houthis. And the U.S. just spent several weeks pushing their shit in on a colossal scale. Look, I don't care who you are, man. Like, they're not doing well. Like, just strictly by the numbers, they are getting their shit fucking rocked. So then, who does Iran have left? Because Iran provides weapons, equipment, money to all of those different organizations who are now screaming for more of it. Why not go to the source? Well,
a lot of that has to do with the fact that when the previous president was in office, he removed a ton of the restrictions and the embargoes we had on Iran, and they started moving hundreds of millions of barrels out of Karg Island and transferring it all over the world, and they were making a ton of money. In the 45th presidency of Trump, he had locked them out. They were making no money. The world was functionally quiet. But as soon as that money started rocking back into Iran and they were able to support these terror organizations, they were able to outfit them much better.
They say the road held paved with good intentions.
Well, that's a fact.
I think Biden was trying to see what would happen is if they started trading again with extra money coming in, would they start opening McDonald's on the side of the road, you know, that kind of way? I think it's
right, but they weren't going to accept Western companies in their space. So
not with the powers that are there at the moment.
Right, and even if they said they would, it was an empty promise. While they're busy stabbing you in the back, they're not going to eat your Big Macs on the front end either. So, but they will take all the money.
As I say, I think Biden was very naive, or the people advising him were very naive. I think what worked before is not going to work now. As they say, you just can't throw money at a problem and hope it solves itself. And
also there was the cognitive decline of old Frank Joseph Biden, when was he not viable? Because it's come out that like heart problems, cognitive problems, and there was a space where right up until that debate that he had with Trump, where everybody's like, no, he's great. And then he goes on TV and everybody's like, oh, no, he's not great. And in fact, he couldn't have been great for a long, long time based on that decline.
As I've always said, that will cost the Democrats for years to come, putting him up for re-election.
Right, and they had a whole long time to find a different candidate.
They had well over 2 years. We could see it.
Right. Well,
when he went on TV, the time Ukraine was invaded by Russia, and he was sitting in front of other world leaders, and his vice president was next to the world leaders, and he made a slip of condemning Poland's invasion of the Ukraine. Everyone in the world saw that, including other world leaders who were sitting there.
Right. Well, another interesting so the Biden-Harris campaign was the entity that received the monies from the DNC and from all the super PACs. So they couldn't go with another candidate other than Harris and keep the war chest. Right.
And then fairness, Harris's, there's no way anyone can win a presidential election in less than 100 days, no matter how good or charismatic you are. Not going to happen. And the Democratic Party should really look at themselves right now, the mistakes they've made in the past, and try to rebuild themselves into something better for their own country.
Well, maybe they can
not just try to play into every small little idea that seems to be floating around the internet at the time.
Well, they should have real policies, and they should be able to check those policies and how they work. Or they could contact Sinn Féin or Fianna Gael, maybe Fianna Fáil. Get some advice.
Well, funny enough, is a lot of the democratic policies is what we have in our own country at the moment.
That's working out great for you, isn't it? We should ask the Unbroken Man what he thinks about that, or your buddy Derek Domino. I don't think they're too hip on it. All right, let's let Ethan cook.
No, they're on about immigration issues. I'm talking about social welfare system and so on.
Right. I'm following.
It works out pretty well.
All right, let's let HLC do his thing.
Well, the reason we previously haven't gone to the source is because they're friends with Russia. What's Russia doing right now? Oh, shit. Russia's having trouble with Ukraine. Look, I don't care. You can shake this any way you want to. I'm not trying to say, like, Ukrainians are better than Russians. I'm not getting caught up in the whole political bullshit of it right now. It doesn't matter what nation on earth you are. The amount of losses that Russia and Ukraine have both suffered right now during this war would cripple anybody, including the United States. Although we definitely wouldn't lose that many, but still, right? So now Iran is circumstantially cornered. They don't really have any friends. And China's more on the economic war stage right now, not so much on the military war stage. They're building up for that military aspect, and, neither here nor there. So now we have an opportunity to reduce Iran's capability to provide Shahed drones to Russia, to provide oil, gas, and everything else over to China, and they have no friends that are going to come and save them. That is the timing. That is where we're at right now. That, at least in my belief, is the reason that Israel and the United States have moved in and started putting the fucking pain on Iran. So, what has been hit?
That makes a lot of sense. That seems like a fairly comprehensive.
No, it's a good time. Now is a very good time to hit them.
Yeah. Well, it's a comprehensive set of occurrences that brings us to where we are. Right.
Yeah,
so it explains, here we are. Here's why we did what we did.
Guys, I don't want to tell you how long it took me to write all these notes. So first, we're going to go over Operation Rising Lion. And I'm not even going to say who I think caused more damage to the other. I'm going to let you guys decide. OK, I'm just going to go over. And these are from sources that are both Israeli and Iranian and some third party sources. So I kind of just put some stuff together just to see. This is what I'm thinking is actually happening. And there's a whole lot of it's all shrouded in false information, misinformation, or some of it's correct. I don't know. It's really hard to follow. But Operation Rising Lion. At the Natanz nuclear facility, the pilot fuel enrichment plant was hit 3 times and destroyed. The electrical substation and backup generators have been destroyed, and several air defense systems have been destroyed. At the Esfahan Nuclear Tech Center, they've lost metallic uranium production facility. It's been damaged or destroyed. Hard to say there. The uranium conversion facility has been damaged. The fuel plate fabrication plant has been damaged. And a 4th critical building has been destroyed. I couldn't really figure out what the hell that was there. At the Arak nuclear complex, the IR-40 reactor containment building has been destroyed. Distillation towers for heavy water production have been destroyed. At the Fordo fuel enrichment plant, Iran says Israel struck the site. However, Israel denies this. As of now, there's no visible damage, but that was on the 12th of June. And on the 16th of June, Israel said that they went in and attacked, but so far there's no visible damage, although earthquake sensors that were nearby were triggered. So something was hit. At the Parchin military complex, it's been hit multiple times in facilities used to make ballistic missiles. The Tehran Nuclear Research Center, multiple strikes damaged the building used to make and test centrifuge rotors. The Shahid Masami group, it's been struck. Several buildings that are used for chemical weapons production and research have been destroyed. Now, when it comes to assassinations, we're scratching the surface. So far, Israel has eliminated the Iranian Chief of Staff for Armed Forces, the Commander-in-Chief of the IRGC, the Commander of the Iranian Military, Commander-in-Chief of the IRGC Aerospace Forces, Commander of the IRGC Air Defenses, Commander of the IRGC Intelligence, 7 high-level Iranian nuclear scientists, the Senior Iranian Commander to Quds. He is the one who helped orchestrate the attack on October 7th, and a senior Iranian commander of the Quds force associated with Unit 190, which is the unit, like I stated before, that transfers weapons and equipment over to their terror homies. Now, these are the government locations outside of nuclear facilities that have been hit. Iranian Ministry of Defense has been damaged. The Organization of Defense and Innovation and Research has been damaged. The Iranian Ministry of Foreign Affairs Library has been damaged. The Iranian Ministry of Justice has been damaged. The Iranian Ministry of Intelligence has been damaged. Iranian Law Enforcement Command damaged. Islamic Republic of Iran Broadcasting, significant damage, been hit 4 times. Evin Prison, the main gate, has been damaged along with some administrative buildings. Palestine Square countdown clock has been destroyed. Yeah, IRGC headquarters have been damaged. The IRGC Quds Forces headquarters has been damaged. The IRGC Basij HQ has been damaged. It's the Basij, I don't know how to say that. It's the Iranian militia. That basically, the Ayatollah Khamenei often refers.
It's like the head of their National Guard, kind of.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
To them as the force of 20 million or something like that. So it's their militia headquarters. The IRGC headquarters in Khomeini has been damaged. The Iranian Air Force 2nd Tactical Air Base, several buildings have been destroyed where they house 3 squadrons of MiG-29s and F-5s and a runway that they created to avoid those jets being able to take off even when they are repaired. The Hamadan Air Base hangar holding F-4s has been severely damaged and they destroyed the radar. Iranian Air Force 1st Tactical Air Base has been severely damaged. Most of the hangars holding planes. This is also where we saw the videos of the F-14s on the tarmac getting smoked. That was the most bittersweet thing I think I've ever experienced in my life. Like, yay! You know, they're destroying Iranian military capability, but fuck, couldn't we have stole them instead?
You've got to be shitting me. An F-14?
Ugh. Asadabad Airport medium-range ballistic missiles launchers have been destroyed. Iranian Air Force 14th Tactical Air Base aerial refueling aircraft has been destroyed. Khatami Air Base damaged, that had hangars with F-14s, Chengdu F-7s, and the PC-7 training aircraft. Wow. Amman Missile Base, several buildings significantly damaged that are holding mid-range ballistic missiles. Tehran Ballistic Missile Air Defense Base, Mossad damaged that with drones. IRGC Tabriz missile launch sites. They have 2 sites that are destroyed now. Kermanshah underground missile facility, 10 strikes, closing the tunnel entrances and silo openings and destroying storage buildings. That's where they would store and launch ballistic missiles from. Bid Ganeh, 2 ballistic missile storage facilities destroyed. Kamen missile base drive-through facility. It's to transfer missile launchers and missiles to different areas. That's been destroyed. At least the entrances have been destroyed. Karamabad Missile Base, several buildings for storage of missiles and the launch sites have been destroyed. Gamsar Missile Fuel Production Facility has been damaged. Tirani Mogadam Missile Base extensively damaged. Fuck, man, I am so tired of this goddamn word salad. Just name it like Mike's Missiles or some shit. Najafabad Missile Base has been damaged. Kojir Missile Production Complex has been hit to cause a large explosion and fires. Shahid Sultani Garrison Missile Storage and Production Sites have been damaged. 16 military installations that were not previously listed have all been hit. Varying locations, barracks, kind of just reducing their ability to attack. Gadir Radar has been damaged. The Shobashi Radar has been destroyed. Shiraz Electronics Industries have been damaged. The Efsan Ammunition ammunition factory has been destroyed. Iran Helicopter Support and Renewal Company has been heavily damaged. Iran Aircraft Manufacturing Industries Corporation has been damaged. 3 oil refineries, 1 oil depot, 1 natural gas production facility, and then they had 4 accidental civilian strikes, including Farabi Hospital, which Israel actually apologized for. They're like, that wasn't our target. We fucked that up. So that's what Israel has hit. That's not even counting the strikes that the U.S. did. So now let's move on to Iran, the Operation True Promise 3. So far, Iran has hit the Kiria. I don't know how to say that right. It's an IDF headquarters. It wasn't hit directly. A missile struck nearby. The Israeli Military Intelligence School has been struck 4 times. The Ministry of the Interior has had minor damage, blew out windows, a missile struck nearby. U.S. Embassy has suffered shockwave damage because of a nearby missile impact. The U.S. Consulate in Iraq, they tried. 2 drones were shot down. So no damage there. It's in the list of attacks. They tried. Soroka Medical Center damaged by a ballistic missile. Weizmann, I don't know how to say it. Institute of Science has been damaged by a ballistic missile. Gavyam Nagev Advanced Tech Park has been struck and damaged. They've damaged 1 oil refinery. So far, I didn't see any of this destroyed. It just says damaged. 1 oil refinery, the Haifa power plant, a wastewater treatment facility, and they've had about 15 strikes that have landed in civilian areas and around residential buildings.
Tel Aviv, yeah.
That's it. Look, I'm not going to say who I think won, but like, if you guys saw my notes and saw the comparison of what each country has hit, I mean, it becomes clear to me, but I don't want to tell you how to live your life. Now, during this time, it's important to note that the United States struck 3 nuclear sites with MOPS, or Massive Ordnance Penetrator, similar to the penetrator Russia's mom likes. I'm sorry. Sometimes Grandpa Buff he's there. And then Iran attacked a U.S. base in Qatar, and 13 out of the 14 missiles are shot down, one of which they didn't even shoot it down on purpose. It wasn't going to hit anything important. But judging by 15 strikes versus 4 strikes on civilian locations, I'd say one of these countries is slightly more accurate, which of course mentally sent me down a rabbit hole of like, well, why are they just going so sledgehammer in Palestine, in the Gaza Strip? But then I thought like, well, it's because Hamas hides in those. So they take out that building, then Hamas runs to another one, and they take out that building. It's a fucking mess. Now you got to understand, when talking about intercepts, now everyone wanted me to get into a little bit of missiletism here. When you're talking about an intercept, a missile is coming down. I don't have my whiteboard set up yet. I haven't found a place for it. I will get there eventually. But as a missile is coming down, you're predicting its impact point. It's called a GIP, a ground impact point. The system, based off of the way the missile is traveling, kind of tries to estimate where it's going to land at. And that
HLC really loves missile stuff. That's why he has the missiletism. I get it.
Yes,
I get it.
yes.
What was his job
He loves
for?
missiles.
Yeah. He loves things that go boom on ballistic paths. Awesome.
can move as the missile comes down, or does flippy doo doo does, or whatever shit that it does to try and avoid missile intercepts. Now, when you hit that target, people think you're just hitting the missile. Like, we just need to hit the missile. No. Most air defense systems on the planet, that is their goal, is just hitting the missile. The U.S. takes it a step further. Now, this one I got a tiptoe on. We're not looking to hit the missile. We want to destroy the payload. We target the payload in that incoming intercept. Now, the enemy's gotten smart, and sometimes they move the payload behind where the warhead would be, or they move it in different places, or they have decoys. They do a bunch of different creative shit, and we have ways to combat a lot of that. Not every single thing, but we're better set up than everybody else. Now, when you hit it, even if you destroy the payload, you still have several thousand pounds of debris that is falling to the ground. And that is an unfortunate reality of our job. My job in and of itself, well, my former job, was to protect often air bases. I can't think of a single time I was protecting like foreign military assets. I was just protecting U.S. assets. Not saying we don't, I never did. So we protect our assets, we protect our runways, things like that. So if I can stop that missile short, hopefully it's going to fall in just open land where no one's going to get hurt. But occasionally that is not the case. Did I protect my asset? Yes. But is Pawtucket, who tractor and cow that it fell on, going to be pissed off? Yes, absolutely.
This is a cow farm. You're gonna find cows outside.
Now, while the U.S. is kind of downplaying the entire attack on Qatar because Iran telegraphed it, they're like, hey, we're going to attack right here, and the U.S. shot it down. That was so that they could save face in front of their military powers and that we had an opportunity to de-escalate it. That was
Yeah, that is really bad chess right there. Really bad chess.
It was, yeah. I think Iran. I understand why they ran ahead and tried to save face on both sides, but it made him look weaker actually.
A lot weaker, yeah. They should have just done the thing, and then. But the problem with that is if they didn't inform and something horrific happens, then they would have bought a lot of misery. A lot of misery.
Yes, I think either way, I think Iran was. There was no easy way for Iran to.
Right. Once they made the choice to shoot the missile, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, crazy.
Actually, that was just political fucking showmanship right there. Realistically, it didn't need to happen. The difference is the Qataris are viewing it very differently, and everybody over there is kind of cool but not cool with Iran, and it sucks. We're like, why are we attacking Iran? Well, Iran is the center of instability in the region. Saudi Arabia and Iran are both vying for, being in charge of the Middle East. Enough that Iran pumped a bunch of money into the Houthis, and then Saudi Arabia attacked the living shit out of the Houthis. It was super bloody, and the UAE helped them. It was just a rough time. Now, the UAE, United Arab Emirates, their chief trade partner is Iran, which is surprising considering they are incredibly westernized. Now, a lot of those countries in the Middle East, they rely on the United States for protection. And of course, we have our own deals in that. That's more like down the road. Like, yes, we protect them, but it's not usually for free. Sometimes it is, but not regularly. It also gives us a place to store our troops and stuff like that. And any kind of attack on U.S. forces in a foreign location draws attention to the fact that U.S. forces are in a foreign location, which those countries, oftentimes they're like the Crown Prince and stuff, don't like the world seeing that because it makes them feel like they can't protect their own assets, and they don't really.
They can't. They can't. That's it. They can't. If Iran really wanted to, there's a lot of things they could do to those countries, but they can't alienate them or they can't sell oil.
Yeah.
Right.
I think nobody wants to pick a fight with some of the larger oil producers on the planet.
Yeah, because they control the dinosaur juice, bro. That's what they do.
Everyone, that's it. Everyone has to sit down there and, kiss his feet. That's it. That's the deal you're made.
Really like the U.S. being there in general. Look, you got stupid people in every country that are like, send them home, and then the U.S. leaves and they get fucking bombed. They're like, where was America?
Cecil! I need you, Cecil!
It's the dumbest shit. So anyways, all of these countries, the Gulf states, they want Iran dealt with, but diplomatically. Historically speaking, that doesn't really fucking work, okay? It just doesn't, right? They'll be like, yes, we will do this, and then
It's a power dynamic, and Iran doesn't follow through. At least they haven't since 1979. So
no.
They just start pumping money into terror organizations who do all their dirt for them. It's a shitty way to live life, but I digress. In fact, a political scientist in the United Arab Emirates actually stated, "We've been living next to Iran for years and for centuries. We know how difficult Iran is." So basically, to sum up this entire video, why did Israel and the United States go into Iran? Timing. Timing is probably, and again, no official sources said that, but it logically makes sense to me from a tactical perspective. Now, with the amount of infrastructure and weapons that has been crippled in Iran, now Iran has stated that their primary goal now is to get their nuclear program back up and running, and they're downplaying the amount of damage that it has suffered, and just judging off of what I just read through, that's a lot of shit that is fucked up. Like but they have damn near bottomless oil money. It's like the third largest reserve on the planet. But this also makes a lot of the Gulf states pretty upset because many of those countries have realized how deep of pockets that a lot of tourists have. The United Arab Emirates themselves have spent billions on infrastructure to try and bring in tourism because they want to show the world that part of the world is safe and you can go there and be a tourist. When you're sending missiles and Mach fuck over top.
Say again?
I've been on their airline and it is absolutely gorgeous.
No, those planes are good. Yeah.
Sure. Wow. Oh, wow. It's like a flying hotel. Beautiful.
And they don't really believe that anymore. So that's a down dirty kind of understanding of what is going on in the world right now and why it is important that these things happen at this time and where it could potentially go. Do I foresee it expanding? No, I don't. I genuinely do not see this conflict expanding and becoming a global conflict or World War III like a lot of people.
Yeah. Anyways,
he's right. He's
absolutely correct.
Right. Yeah, it's going to be a regional conflict.
Yeah,
and eventually Iran will come to his senses. Eventually,
one would hope.
Probably I think there's going to be definitely a popular uprising soon enough, I would say. See them either way. You can see the kind of
I can't see it going another way. Yeah, I can't see it going another way. All right, so like and subscribe and ring the bell and do all the things, comment, do all the things to help us beat the algorithm. We'd appreciate it. For Patrick McCallum, I am Alex Johansson. Y'all have a wonderful day. Out.